Welcome back to Talos of Tech, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about future generation iPhones, both this year's and next year's, because it's been a while since I've talked about them and there's been plenty of leaks to cover, so without further ado, let's begin. First bit of good news, and there isn't a whole lot of it, so I'm going to grab it and hang on tight, is that Ming-Chi Kuo is predicting the next generation iPhones are going to be sporting larger batteries, partly because of that rumored bilateral wireless charging feature, which we saw on the Galaxy S10. I'm, for one, very much in favor of Apple adding this feature because I think Apple is pretty much king at this point of the wearable market, between the new generation AirPods, Apple Watch Series 4 outselling everything else in its field, making the iPhone Apple's most popular product. Be able to charge their most popular wearables is just a fit made in heaven. That would go together so well, it would fit the ecosystem so well, and yeah, it would make sense that if you're advertising that feature on your next generation iPhones, there better be some extra battery pack to come along with it in order for you to use your iPhone as you do throughout the day, but also be able to charge up your AirPods, your Apple Watch on the back once you flip that thing over, just in a bind, just in case you're running low on a charge for some reason. You want to fill that thing up. That would make so many people's days go by much easier. The conflict, however, with this idea is the Apple Watch. As you guys know, I think that was one of the main reasons AirPower never quite worked out, because the Apple Watch is limited in size and the way it charges, to the point that really the only way to charge the Apple Watch is via Apple's proprietary inductive charger, which isn't necessarily Qi, even though it is Qi based and it's using that type of technology with coils lining up. Specifically, Apple's 38mm watches are now 40mm watches are still too small to reach that Qi wireless charging standard, which is why you can't drop your Apple Watch on a standard Qi charger and have it charge up. Knowing they're putting bilateral wireless charging on the iPhones means that if they're only able to put Qi on the back of the iPhone, even if it charges really slowly, will you necessarily be able to charge your Apple Watch on the back? Perhaps not, depending on how the Apple Watch Series 5 turns out, which my #1 go-to feature now for the Apple Watch Series 5 is making it Qi compatible. I'm not exactly sure how to do it, but just arrange those coils inside that watch differently in some way so that they can be wider and they can be Qi supportive, so you don't have to use the Apple Watch proprietary connector in order to charge that thing up. That way, in a sense, you could almost have AirPower on the back of your iPhone to a certain extent, where you could even drop your watch and your AirPods on the back, let them charge up. But ultimately, I do think that's wishful thinking. I think the main argument for the bilateral charging on the iPhones is going to be charging up your AirPods, as they may end up being more popular than the Apple Watch. If anything, they're pretty close, they're pretty tied. But either way, these support Qi, this does not currently, so it's more likely that the Apple Watch will not be able to be charged via the back of the iPhone, which does suck. I agree, it would be much better if you could, but hey, I'll take what we can get. Also, if you don't care about bilateral charging, you don't care about wireless charging AirPods or watches, then it's just a bigger battery. Kuo is anticipating a 10 to 15% increase for the iPhone 11 Max, and a 20 to 25% battery increase for the iPhone 11, and a 0 to 5% increase for the iPhone 11R, or whatever they end up calling it. That's my running name for it right now. It may change later, of course. Apple always goes weird with their naming schemes. But regardless, bigger batteries means more screen time, means you can use your phone, keep doing what you're doing, and not be limited by that lithium. So overall, good news. The other side of bad news is we have a leaked schematic of that ugly camera module on the back of the iPhones that show that very asymmetrical, triangular, but flash and microphone incorporated camera bump on the back, which, as you guys know, I'm not a fan of, but I do want to remind everyone, we still have one more month, okay, till the Apple iPhone designs get finalized. We know from previous experience that iPhones have to enter production in the month of May, which is not now. Let's remember that it's not yet, which means that they could still be theorizing new designs, new concepts, and as ugly as that design looks and as legit as it may look for a lot of people because it looks like a manufacturing part, I will remind you, in the past when I reported on the iPhone 8, which would inevitably be called the iPhone 10, there were a lot of ugly leaks that looked very legit, that looked like they were straight out of a factory, that showcased this weird iPhone with a fingerprint reader on the back, with a forehead and a chin, even demo models that looked real, that people were holding. Part of me wonders if that was a design Apple was considering, but luckily scrapped in the nick of time and decided, you know what, this iPhone's ugly, we're not releasing that thing. Either way, I'm glad the iPhone 10 ended up being the real thing and not that ugly version, but just remember, there was a lot of evidence to support that uglier iPhone 8. even videos inside of factories showing people all working on that iPhone. And where is it today? No idea. We don't see it. It was never released. So I'm personally hoping, gripping onto that slight rope of hope in thinking maybe this is a prototype. Maybe this is something Apple made just so that they could experiment with the cameras, and then later they'll finalize their design and go with something more slick, something more cool. Unlikely, but hopefully something like Apple iDesigner has designed for the iPhone 11s. I've seen so many better concepts out there of how the iPhone could look with the 3 cameras and the flash. To me, though, it just simply doesn't make sense that, okay, on the XR, we have 1 camera, so that's the camera bump. On the iPhone XS and XS Max, we have 2 cameras, so you have a slightly bigger bump. But then when we want to add a 3rd lens to the iPhone 11, suddenly it has to get 2.5 times bigger. You don't just make it a 3rd bigger. Just do what you did on the iPhone 10, just with 3 lenses. Leave everything else the same. Why does it have to be so asymmetrical and bizarre? And I know there's a good amount of people out there that actually are fine with this design and say they don't care, which understand there is that side of me too in this situation. I also am kind of thinking, I don't look at that part of my phone. Obviously, it's not going to make me hate the whole product. I'm obviously very interested in what that 3rd lens does. I'm hoping for an ultra-wide lens because I have used that on phones like the Galaxy S10 and had a lot of fun with it, but bizarre video limitations with it. So knowing that the triple lens setup will be on an iPhone means that hopefully I'll be able to record 4K at 60 video with that lens and just overall just have more options as a photographer and a videographer. Even if this design ends up being real and that back really is that ugly, it's not going to make me hate the overall product. It's just a weird design choice, and I really hope it's not real. The other bit of news, which I try to avoid to a certain extent, but I figured since we're talking about iPhone leaks today, I might as well just tack this on at the end. We're already starting to get leaks for the 2020 iPhone, so not the one that's coming out in September, but the one that's coming out the year after. These we usually get from supply chains that are taking orders of smartphone displays far in advance, which means these are subject to change. However, the report does come from Digitimes, who has accurately predicted in the past the current iPhone lineup as it is today. One model that's 6.1 inch with LCD, and then 2 models that are OLED, one being 5.8 inches and one being 6.5. Same guys who predicted that are also predicting this for the 2020 iPhone lineup. Once again, 3 iPhone sizes, except this time they are all OLED. So the iPhone 11R, which we see in September, that could be the last flagship iPhone we see that has an LCD display. 2020 might be the first year Apple completely switches over to 100% OLED, and they're all shipping with different screen sizes than we know currently. Some bigger, some smaller. Digitimes is reporting that the iPhones will start at 5.4 inches, which is a little bit smaller than the already existent 5.8 inch iPhone 10 and 10s, 6 inches for that middle size, and then up to 6.67 inches for that Plus model. Do I think this means different form factors? Maybe, but I think it's more likely that Apple is planning on shrinking down on those bezels as little as there is on our iPhones. They want to shrink that down even further, and it's more likely that we're going to have the same form factors that we have right now, just with more screen by shaving off a little bit more of those uniform bezels that go all the way around the iPhone. Knowing that we're switching to OLED displays, I hope that means that we can shrink down kind of the fat bezel that goes around the edges on the XR, because to me, this feels like a regular iPhone 10 in a phone case because of how bulky those side bezels are. But if you're coming from an iPhone 8, a lot of people don't really care that much, though I was coming from a 10s Max, so I do notice it quite easily. But I do think this is a natural progression for Apple. It makes sense that as they get better at manufacturing OLED displays, Face ID sensors, and everything that makes the iPhone 10 what it is, they're able to make them more affordably. So in order to make a more budget phone right now, they have to use LCD, but by next year, OLED is going to be so much more affordable and so much more streamlined that it'll be much easier for Apple to make a budget phone even with an OLED display and Face ID and the uniform bezels all the way around. So makes sense that to me, by 2020, there won't be any iPhones with an LCD display, and hopefully OLED will still get better simultaneously. I know there's people out there that get headaches when they look at OLED displays, so I feel bad for those audiences and customers out there. I also feel bad for people who wanted to have ProMotion on the next generation iPhone, you know, that higher refresh rate, because with OLED, it's currently not very feasible to get 120 hertz on a smartphone. We've had phones get to 90 hertz, but not quite as fast as the iPad Pros or the Razer phone and Razer Phone 2, which sport LCD displays, but very high refresh rates. So feel bad for those people. Hopefully by 2020, it may be possible to get those higher refresh rates embedded into OLED. But of course, this is far, far premature, very, very early leaks. So all of this is subject to change. It might not happen at all. I also think we should entertain the possibility that Apple may be slightly changing their form factors on their iPhones. That way, old phone cases from the 2019 iPhone lineup will not work with the 2020 lineup. That way, they can make a ton more money off of accessories and kind of cheat everyone out. So maybe the iPhone 12R will be slightly smaller than the 11R. That way you'll have to buy all new phone cases and Apple can make some more money. That's the evil route they could go, which is entirely possible, but the camera placements on the back with the 11R getting a dual camera, both the 11 and 11 Max getting triple cameras, with those different designs you'll likely have to get phone cases anyway, so who knows. Let me know what you're thinking of the upcoming iPhone 11, and what do you think of these new screen sizes? Is Apple making the displays on their phones too big, or do you say go for it, make them as big as you can? Personally, I'm in that park. I want the biggest display possible on my phone. As long as it fits in my pocket, make the screen bigger. I'm borderline ready to switch to the iPad mini as my daily driver. If only that thing had Apple Watch support and could take phone calls and SMS texts, then I would start to legit consider it. But anywho, all that good stuff, let me know what you're thinking down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.